So you want to own a football stadium. Your name on the roof. 90,000 seats. 90,000 people, one Saturday, screaming for something you built. The dream goes like this. Build the cathedral. Sell the tickets. Count the money while everyone chants your name. Except here's the first crack in the fantasy. Your team plays about 20 home games a year. 20. The other 345 days. This masterpiece is the most expensive empty room on earth. In the fantasy, the money just pours in while the whole city stands and sings your name. Sounds simple. It is not. Because how a stadium actually makes money and how it quietly dies is one of the strangest businesses on earth. One country spent $10.5 billion on stadiums like this. Today they are weeds and rust. Hold that number. Step 5. Real numbers, real sources. This is marked up. Step 1. Before you sell a single ticket, you have to survive the buy-in. Building a modern stadium does not cost millions. It has not cost millions for a very long time. It costs billions. Cost overruns are not the exception in this business. They are the rule. Almost every great stadium finishes late and hundreds of millions over what the public was first promised. Tottenham's ground came in around £1 billion, the most expensive club stadium ever built. And watch the trick every stadium plays. They told the public 400 million. The final bill was near £1 billion. That gap is not an accident. Why so much? Because a stadium is a small city that only opens 20 days a year. A roof that opens and closes. A pitch that can slide out into the sun. Screens the size of buildings, and enough wiring underneath to run a town. The land, in a spot worth bragging about. The bowl itself, steel, concrete, a moving roof. Then the fit out, pitch, screens, wiring, 90,000 seats. Add it up, and you clear $1 billion before one turnstile clicks. And you are competing with the last billionaire's masterpiece. Every new stadium has to outdazzle the one before it. A bigger roof, brighter screens, a museum, a sky bar. And that is to build brand new. You do not even have to build one from scratch to spend a fortune. Real Madrid spent 1.3 billion euros just to renovate the Bernabeu. A renovation, not even a new build. Even giving an old stadium a facelift now costs the better part of $1 billion. Barcelona's rebuild of the Camp Nou blew straight past its budget, over 1.2 billion euros, and still counting. Everton, 800 million. Tottenham, $1 billion. Renovating the Bernabeu more. And in America, SoFi Stadium, $5.5 billion, the most expensive building of any kind ever raised for sport. Spread $5.5 billion across the seats, and every single one costs about $78,000 to build. A seat that someone sits in for 2 hours. Wembley cost about $1.5 billion to rebuild. The cheering faded in a season. The debt did not. And you have not sold a single hot dog yet. So be clear about what you are actually buying. Not a building. A permanent, hungry liability with a truly beautiful roof. Step 2. Here is the first real secret every stadium owner learns. Do not pay for it yourself. The most valuable skill in this business is not architecture. It is convincing an entire city to reach for its wallet on your behalf. Over 50 years, across the biggest venues, the public covered a median of 73% of the cost. Almost 3/4. Paid by people who may never buy a ticket. They will call it a subsidy. Think of it as the city buying you an enormous present that it is somehow not allowed to keep. How do you get them to say yes? Leverage. You gently remind the city that the team could always move somewhere else. And suddenly, the money is found. It works everywhere. New York State handed the Buffalo Bills $850 million of public money for a new stadium. The team kept the team. The public kept the bill. In Tennessee, once you count the interest, taxpayers were put on the hook for around $2.3 billion. For one stadium. Or go even bigger. Host a World Cup and let an entire country build your stadiums for you. Qatar spent $220 billion around the 2022 World Cup. The most expensive tournament in the history of the planet. That is more than 15 times what Russia spent 4 years earlier. The number does not just grow. It explodes. $6.5 billion of it went straight into the stadiums themselves. Paid by the state. not by the clubs and the games that use them afterwards. And this is the entire game in one picture. The public writes the check. The owner keeps the building, the brand, and every pound of profit that follows. And the timing is genius. The stadium lasts 30 years. The politician who approved it is gone in 4. The debt stays behind. Economists have studied this to death. 86% of them say public money for stadiums is a bad deal. For the public, never for you. Add up half a century of these deals, and taxpayers have quietly poured tens of billions into stadiums. 33 billion, and counting. And the pitch to the public is always the same. New jobs, new business, a boom for the whole city. The research is brutal. Those jobs mostly never arrive. The money just shifts from one pocket to another. Even the fans can prepay your building. In America, they sell a seat license. Pay up to $100,000 just for the right to then buy a ticket. So there it is. Build a billion-dollar building without spending a dollar of your own. Lesson 2. Step 3. Now the truly strange part. The money is not in the football. Remember, about 20 home games. If tickets to the match were the whole business, this building would be bankrupt by March. So the new Bernabeu was designed to make money every single day of the year. Around 1 million euros a day. The truth is, a modern football club is really an events company that happens to play football about 20 times a year. How? The pitch slides away, a stage rolls in, and on a random Tuesday night, the biggest act in the world sells the place out. No match, no trophy, just money. The band does not care that it is a football pitch. They care that 100,000 tickets sell in a single hour. One pitch, 365 events in a year. Concerts, tours, corporate days, a completely different sport. Football is just a handful of them. And on the days it is football, they get you again, $9 for a beer, the parking, the shirt, the burger. A single fan can spend more inside the gates than they paid to walk through them. At the priciest grounds, a single beer runs $18. And the ticket itself now moves like a share price. Clubs like Valencia let demand set it, minute to minute. Then look at who really pays inside the bowl. The suites and club seats are only about a fifth of the capacity, and they bring in around 80% of the ticket money. The ordinary fan sings in the cheap seats. But the real business happens in the glass boxes above them. Champagne, contracts, a single suite worth $100,000 a season. And the name on the roof? You sell that too. Spotify pays Barcelona 20 million euros a year. Bayer pays 30. That is free money for a single word. Then the shirt, the sleeve, the training kit, the boards around the pitch, an official partner for the beer, the airline, the watch. Everything you can see is for rent. And the name is only the beginning. Every board around that pitch flips through a dozen sponsors a match. The entire bowl is rented advertising space, sold by the second. Because the stadium was never just a venue. It is the single biggest billboard your city owns. And people will pay just to walk through it on a quiet Tuesday. The museum. The stadium tour. Millions of visitors a year at some clubs. No match required. The club museum and the stadium tour alone can pull over 1 million visitors a year. People paying real money to look at an empty stadium. Add it all together, and the very best stadiums make more money with the football switched off than with it on. Put it together, and at Real Madrid the stadium alone drives nearly a third of the biggest revenue in all of football. That is how Real Madrid became the first football club ever to pull in over €1 billion in a single year. The building did a huge share of it. Step 4. But every one of those days, a meter is running. And it never, ever switches off. An empty stadium still costs a fortune. The lights are off, and the money is still leaving. Beijing's Olympic Stadium costs around $10 million a year just to keep standing. And it is barely used for anything at all. And on a match day, you hire a small army, stewards, cooks, cleaners, police, 1,000 people for one afternoon, and then you send them all home. The grass alone needs its own crew, and sometimes its own lighting rigs to grow in the shade of the stands. The pitch is a garden that costs like a hospital. Security, stewards, police, insurance for 90,000 people packed into one place. The bill for safety alone would sink a small company. Then the real weight lands. You borrowed $1 billion. The bank wants it back, with interest, sold out or not. The staff, the energy, the security, the upkeep, every month, forever. And the bank is not sentimental. Miss the payments, and the same gorgeous building becomes an exhibit in a courtroom. And relegation is the nightmare. Drop one division and your income can have overnight, while the billion-pound mortgage does not move a single inch. And on the days you do fill it, the middlemen appear. The ticketing platform, the caterer, the agency that books the concert. Each takes a slice before you ever see a cent. By the time the ticketing fee, the caterer and the agency have each taken their cut, the owner of the actual building is often the last one paid. One bad season, one drop to a lower league, and the crowds and the money can vanish while the billion-pound bill stays exactly the same. So here is the quiet truth of Step 4. On its own, matchday income barely covers the machine. The profit has to come from somewhere else entirely. Step 5, which brings us back to the number I told you to hold. Because a stadium does not usually die in a fire. It dies of silence, of a city that simply stopped coming. There is even a name for a stadium too big for the town around it. A white elephant. Cape Town built a $600 million stadium for the 2010 World Cup. Today it can lose up to $10 million a year. FIFA wanted it right on the waterfront because it looked spectacular on television. The cameras got their shot. The city got the bill, forever. Brazil built a $300 million stadium in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. It hosted 4 World Cup games. 4. Then the crowds left, and the jungle started taking it back. Picture it. A world-class arena, built for one glorious month, now sitting in the rainforest with almost nobody left to fill it. Qatar went one further and built a whole stadium out of 974 shipping containers, designed to be taken apart. Years on, it just sits there, whole and empty. Even the Maracana, the most famous ground in all of football, went dark. Months after the Olympics, the power was cut over an unpaid bill. Copper stripped from the walls, seats stolen. Manaus, Athens, a dozen Olympic and World Cup cities. The trap is always identical. Build something magnificent for one glorious month, then pay for the silence forever. And the pattern repeats every 4 years, in a new country, with a bigger number, as if nobody had been watching the last time. But the monster of them all is the number from the very start. In 2004, Athens threw the greatest party on earth. New arenas, new stadiums, a whole Olympic city conjured out of nothing. The bill came to $10.5 billion, around $3 billion over the original budget. It was a party paid for on a national credit card, and the whole country was still paying it off a decade later. The party lasted 16 days. Then the music stopped. 20 years later, the pool is green with algae. The arenas are fenced off and rusting. A country paid for a 16-day party and inherited a graveyard of concrete. $10.5 billion. That is the price of building for one glorious month and paying for it forever. So, still want the keys? Step 6. So why does anyone build one? Why chase this at all? Because the stadium was never the asset. Here is the twist this whole video was building toward. You have been staring at the wrong thing the entire time. The stadium does not make you rich. It makes the club worth more. And the club is the real fortune. The stadium is not the treasure. It is the lever, the thing that quietly makes the treasure, the club, worth more. Real Madrid, $9.5 billion. Barcelona, $7.5. Manchester United, 7.2. And a shining new stadium is exactly how you push those numbers even higher. When Arsenal left Highbury, they did not knock it down. They turned it into 650 luxury flats worth around £500 million. The pitch where they won titles is now a private garden for the residents. That is the real estate, quietly cashing out. To be fair, a few get it exactly right. The clubs that treat the stadium as a 365-day machine, a Bernabeu, a Tottenham, genuinely turn the building into an engine. The trick is never leaning on the football alone. And around the stadium, you quietly build a neighborhood, shops, offices, 2,500 apartments. A hotel. That is where the real money was hiding all along. 900,000 square feet of shops and offices. A hotel. Parks. All of it feeding off the one crowd the stadium reliably pulls in. The owner of the most expensive stadium ever did not really buy a stadium. He bought a whole district, and the stadium is just the anchor that pulls the crowds in. Trophies come and go. Managers come and go. The land underneath all of it only ever gets more valuable. And here is the final sleight of hand. Often you do not even own the concrete. The city owns the stadium. You simply hold the lease and keep the money it throws off. All of the upside, almost none of the brick. So here is the honest answer to who really wins. For the city, the stadium is usually a bad deal. For the owner, the trophy just keeps getting more valuable. So if you ever want to know who really wins one of these deals, do not follow the football. Follow the concrete. But you were never the city. You are the one whose name is up there on the roof. And on a quiet afternoon, a kid in the street points up at that roof, at your name, and swears that one day this will all be theirs. That is what you actually bought. So no, you do not buy a stadium to make money on football. You buy the story, your name, over the door. The building will outlive you. If you are lucky, the name will too. For some people, that is worth more than any money. If one number in here surprised you, the like button is free, the only thing about a stadium that is. Subscribe, the series continues. So, still want the stadium? 90,000 seats. 20 days a year. The bank will see you now.